So while I don't miss the budget racks that used to be in my garage, I do miss the cable systems that were on them. And I missed them so much that I've been saving my pennies, just like everybody has to do. And I finally ponied up and bought one for myself. It's sitting right on the other side of the camera. And instead of going through and making several episodes like I normally do on how to buy a particular product and the pros and cons of each part, which I may do for cable systems, what I figured I'd do is take you guys along with me on the journey I took to buy the cable system that I bought. Show you what I looked at, what I liked, what I didn't, and what I ended up going with and why. And hopefully through that process, I can help you guys pick out a cable system for your garage that you love. And that's what we'll be talking about today on the GymCrafter podcast. Welcome back to the GymCrafter podcast, everybody. My name is Tim. I am the head gym nerd here at GymCrafter.com, the website that I built to help ordinary folks like you and I build home and garage gyms that we absolutely love. And part of having a gym you absolutely love is when you fall in love with a piece of gear, whether it's at your local gym or something that you use at a friend's house, is you find a way to get it into your gym. And that's exactly what I've done. That's exactly what we'll be talking about today. And hopefully, as a side note, we'll be talking about it at a much slower pace. I realized listening to some old episodes that I talk a little bit like a kid with ADHD on meth, and I need to slow it down so I don't sound like that. So appreciate you guys all listening, and know you didn't accidentally have your players on 1.5 times speed. Speaking of having your players on 1.5 times speed, you can now listen to the podcast if you don't want to watch my big bald head on YouTube. I am on Spotify, I am on Amazon, I'm on Podbean, and I am on Apple Podcasts. So check it out over there. Listen on the way to work, listen while you're commuting, all that kind of good stuff. I guess commuting is on the way to work, so that doesn't make a lot of sense. But listen wherever you listen to your podcasts, and if you can, leave a rating. That always helps out. That helps other people find the podcast. That helps me rank higher in like the new and notable podcast sections and all that kind of fun stuff. But for now, let's get into today's episode. And we're going to start today's episode with a training update. I have been training, as I mentioned, I don't have racks in the garage right now. So I have been training in a different way. What I've done is I've taken some of the programs that I normally do and I've kind of modified them for dumbbell work. It's pretty easy. You know, if you're missing something, don't get attached when you're working a program if something calls for a dumbbell bench or a barbell bench press. Don't be afraid to do a dumbbell bench press. If something calls for a tricep push down and you don't have cable stack, don't be afraid to use bands. There's always workarounds. You're really just training the movement patterns. So if you get a program and you're like, oh, I can't do that because I don't have this particular piece of gear, there's always a workaround. Shoot me an email at tim@gymcrafter.com. I give people that type of advice all the time. So if you're having trouble finding a way to do something in your garage gym without a piece of gear, I'm happy to help with that because that's what I've been spending my time doing. I've been doing a lot of kettlebell work. Boy, I've given my landmine a workout. I'll tell you what, guys, if you don't have a landmine in your gym, you are really missing out. There is so much that you can do with a barbell and weights and a landmine if you don't have a rack yet. I did make a podcast, I've referenced this a few times, on how to build a gym a piece at a time and get results along the way. And a rack is actually one of the last things that you buy for your gym. And you buy your barbell and your weights before that. And one of the ways that you use your barbell and weights is a landmine. So I've been using that. I've also really been enjoying Living Fit's, one of my favorite websites for budget gear. And they also have a really great suite of programming options. You can buy individual programs. You can subscribe for like 10 or 15 bucks a month to all their programs. And the cool thing about their programs is they are geared towards garage gym people who don't have a ton of equipment. So they've got some really good kettlebell programs. They've got some really good dumbbell programs. They've got a lot of different programs that are geared towards specific goals or specific types of equipment, whether it's, hey, I only have exercise bands or things like that. So I've been kind of leaning on those a little bit as well, just to kind of mix things up, and actually been kind of having some fun doing that. So it's always fun to mix up your training, even for folks out there who have had a rack in your gym for a really long time. It's nice to mix things up. Your muscles appreciate it, your joints appreciate it, and it's weird because you think you're working out your whole body when you're training with a barbell, and then you do something like this and you realize, wow, I haven't ever used those muscles before. I just went ice skating with my nieces and had the same realization the next day. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know I had those muscles in my legs. So it's been fun. It's a good suggestion for you. I am still waiting for my rack to arrive. I'm a little bit disappointed, to be very honest, and it's a real bad way to start off this experience with this particular rack company. I hope the rack is worth the wait, but it's been a long time. So I hope this rack shows up soon and I can get back to barbell training. But like I said, until that time comes, I've been doing these other alternate forms of training. And again, Living Fit, 15 bucks a month. You can cancel anytime. I'll put a link in the description. As usual, anything we talk about today, I'll put a link in the description below. If you decide you want to buy something we talk about today, definitely appreciate it if you use those links. It doesn't cost you anything. It pays me a little bit of extra on the side, and that is how I pay my bills. So much appreciated. But for now, let's get on to cable systems. Like I said, I had these functional trainers in my house, and I started using them a little bit and then a little bit more and then a little bit more. And I really, really enjoy having them. They really allow you to do a wide range of exercises that you can't do any other way. Even like curls, I really found that using the cable system to train arms has become my favorite way to train arms, whether it's an easy bar attachment for the cable system or whether it's different forms of push downs at different angles. There's just a ton of stuff that you can do. I love having a way to do low rows. You know, you can do as many bent over rows as you want, but there's just no substitute for a nice heavy low row. Same thing with lat pull downs. Again, you can do as many pull-ups as you want, but a lot of people can't do a ton of pull-ups. And even when you can, having a lat pull down where you can do higher reps or do it at different angles and different grip widths, it's just overall, I really, really loved having one. So I started my search for bringing one into the gym. And to be very transparent, the first thing I did was I emailed a bunch of companies and said, hey, I need a cable system. Anybody want to send me one? And the answer is actually no from everybody. So I am not quite yet a big enough channel. So like and subscribe. The more subscribers I have, the more ability I have to go to companies and ask for things to review. So all of you guys who want me to review a bunch of stuff, make sure you're subscribed, make sure your friends and family are subscribed, all that kind of fun stuff, so that I can go to these companies and have a little bit more leverage with them. But until then, I had to buy a cable system. So that meant I was on a budget. I have some plans for the gym, so I was on a little bit of a space constraint as far as what I was going to do. I've got this big rack coming in, so I don't have a ton of room. So just like you guys, I was on a budget of both space and money. So that's kind of where my journey started, was can't get anything for free. What do I look at to buy? And the way that I typically shop for stuff is the first thing I do is I just dream, right? And I think we all do this. I just went through and I said, okay, if I could have anything, I'm not going to care about space or money right now. You know, what do I want? And where I always start is, first of all, what do I need to be able to do? Like in the end, what are the things that I'm buying a cable system for? And my list doesn't include everything that yours might, but this is my list. I definitely wanted to do those lat pull downs and low rows. I wanted to do a little bit of functional trainer stuff, but I don't do cable crossovers. Even though I had the functional trainer style with the dual cables, I almost never did work using both of those pulleys at the same time. I'd say 90% of the time I was using one pulley. So while it would be nice to have two, I really just one would be great. One thing that I wish was different about what I had is I would like to have a lat pull down that's overhead and a low row that allows me to sit on a bench and not the floor. And that's a couple things that I wanted, and something center mounted. And then if I have the option, I would like the ability to have, you know, having gone to Force USA and tried a bunch of trainers that do this, having something that has multiple cable ratios. So in other words, having a stack that's X amount of pounds and being able to pull one handle and have it be a 2-to-1 and then pull another handle and have it be 1-to-1 or something like that would be great. So those are kind of the things that I was looking at and what I wanted. What I didn't need is I didn't necessarily need another rack. I didn't need a bunch of extra stuff. I really just wanted to do those exercises. So in the end, that's a filter that I'm going to run all these choices through. And what I'll do is I'll run through what I looked at and then kind of tell you what I narrowed down my finalists to, and then eventually what I bought, because I'll obviously be shooting some content on what I bought, so you'll see that. But hopefully that'll help you guys, like I said, narrow down your decisions. And I think the things that I looked at are the ones that really, if you're looking for a cable system in your garage, these are the ones that you should look at, or at least they're good representative examples of what you should look at. So if you're looking at cable systems, you always owe it to yourself to start by looking at functional trainers. Functional trainers are like what you would see in a hotel gym, where they've just got the two sides. You've got the two posts on, or the uprights on either side with the trolleys that go up and down. Typically, you've got no overhead lat or low row, although some of the models do have that. Typically, your weight stacks will top out at a feel weight of 100 to 135 to 150 pounds, something like that, because the cable system is what are called a 2-to-1 ratio, meaning that if there's a 200-pound weight stack, the feel weight's going to be 100 pounds at the top end. So that's typically the first thing that you want to look at when you're looking at cable systems. And if your sole intention is to just get something you can do cable work on, you don't want a ton of top end weight, because most of these functional trainers Even the Free Motion, which is a silly expensive one, which it was on my wish list, but I don't know that I would ever buy in this particular situation because it just doesn't have a lot of weight capacity on it. That's one of the drawbacks, right? Is just not a ton of weight that you can do. One of the other drawbacks is they're typically silly expensive. But the two that I looked at was I looked at the Inspire FT2, and then they also make what they call an Inspire FT2 Pro. These guys are in the $5,000 to $6,000 range. I don't need the Pro that's got a Smith machine and things, but one of the things about the Inspire that's great is it does have an overhead lat pull down like I was looking for. It does have a center mount low row. It's got the cable stacks on the sides. By the way, I'm not looking at anything that's plate loaded. As you guys know, if you've watched the podcast, I didn't want to look at anything that was plate loaded because both of the machines that I had in here before were plate loaded, and I absolutely just despised loading and unloading plates. Now that I have a selectorized, and it's a hint as to what I bought, and just being able to move the pin, it is, I got to tell you, I use it more. It's more enjoyable. I make my weight changes as I'm working up in my sets. It's just, for me, it's a much better way to go. I've had a lot of people tell me, oh, don't be lazy. You know, you're working out, just learn to load the weights. And if that's you, that's awesome. That's a great way to save money. The pricing that I'm going to talk about during this episode is typically all for weight stack stuff, and that's a lot more expensive than a plate loaded unit. In fact, the unit that I bought comes in both forms, and it's a huge price difference between the two. So it is a price premium to get the weight stack, but I think it's worth it. So your functional trainers, again, silly expensive on the Inspire. The other one that I looked at was the Rep Fitness Arcadia Max. That's about half the price of the Inspire FT2 at about $2,600. It's nice and tall for me, which is nice, but no center mount lat, no center mount low row. You've got to kind of finagle the sides to do it. The weight capacity, even with the stack upgrade, it definitely wasn't as high as I wanted. But those are the two that I would look at. If I was in the market for a functional trainer, those are for sure two that I would look at. And I kept them on my list just till the end reconsideration, just in case as I was looking at the rest of the stuff, I reconsidered and decided I want that. But I've got to be honest, I eliminated the functional trainers really right off the bat. I didn't want one to start with. I knew after looking at them, now I'm for sure I don't want one. If my gym was different and I was building a different setup, I might. But anyway, you guys get the idea. I roll it out of my list, but I wanted to bring it up here because I know that they're appealing to a lot of people. And if you're doing a ton of cable work and you like small weight increments and you like something that's dedicated, is super smooth, the FT2 is one of the smoothest cable systems you'll ever use. If you ever get an opportunity to use one or you have used one, you'll see what I'm talking about. So there's some definite functional benefits of having that. It's just, it wasn't for me. So what I wanted to look at next was I said, okay, what are the big dogs running around right now in the marketplace, right? And without fail, you've got to look at the Rogue FML6, and then you've also got to look at the Rep Aries 2.0. Those are the two, if you're looking for just kind of the cream of the crop cable systems for a garage gym space, you got to have those two on your list. Both of them are the highest quality that you can get right now. Both of them are super versatile. They both have different ratios for your lat pull downs and your low rows. They've got nice size weight stacks. They've got really good smooth pulleys. The Rogue, like everything Rogue makes, is super overbuilt. Rogue is basically a commercial company and people buy that stuff for their homes. So it is built like a tank. The pull on it is really, really smooth, just like the Inspire FT2, and the Rep, the Aries 2 is also super smooth like that. And those two I put on my list as well. So the pros of those is you get everything you want, right? You get your functional trainer, you get your low row, you get your lat pull down. You also get into an ecosystem that's going to support a lot of other stuff. You've got things like the Rogue Rhino that you can drop into the Rogue rack, and you can really build off of those. You can build storage on the sides. You can do some really cool stuff with those. So that's the advantage of those two. The drawback for me is I don't need a rack, and B, one of the things that I learned with those budget racks here, and also even looking at the Force USA stuff when I was out in Utah, I am not a fan of cramming all of this stuff into the rack. From afar, it looks cool. From a day-to-day use perspective, I always found myself moving cable trolleys around and moving the Smith machine around and moving the different things in different places to get them out of the way when I was trying to do something. And then when I was inside the rack, I'm like, this just feels cramped. And it's just, I didn't enjoy it. And one of the things about working out for me is I really enjoy lifting weights. I really enjoy coming out and using a barbell, dumbbells, kettlebells. Having all of that stuff crammed into my rack reduced the enjoyment of my workout. And I'm fortunate enough to have a big enough area in my garage where I don't have to do that. Now, if I was building a gym where I have one footprint, it's big enough for a rack, I have no other area to put stuff, I would absolutely buy one of these in a heartbeat. One of the benefits of both the Rogue and the Rep is of all of the ones out there, the all-in-one trainers and everything like that, these feel the least cramped, right? Because A, you don't have a Smith machine in there. Now you can add one, or you will be able to add one. Surprise, surprise, you're for sure going to be able to add an add-on Smith machine from a number of different brands of these racks if that's something that you want. But they don't come with one, so that's something that's out of the way. And if I, like I said, if I was in that situation, those are the two that I would seriously consider. And actually, they're pretty close in price. The Rogue obviously is the most expensive. It starts at about $4,900 before shipping and tax. So that's the most expensive one. Comes in a lot of cool colors. A lot of people like the Rogue ecosystem. Everything there, it's all made in the US. So if that's important to you, that's going to be a nice choice. For Rep, it was a little bit less. You could get a basic one for like $3,900 for the Aries 2.0, but built out like I would want it, just like the Rogue was, with like a 6-post rack, because I would want it in the back, and I would also want a rack out front to lift in. That was closer to $5,000. So your price points, you're right up there with the Inspire FT2. You're definitely on the higher end of things. Now for me, like I said, I don't need a rack. I also don't want all that stuff in my rack. So while these are going to be on my list, and they were definitely at the top of my list, guys, I have built more racks on the Rep Fitness Rack Builder than I care to admit and not be embarrassed. So, and if you haven't used that, it's fun to go play around. You can change the colors. You can rotate it 360 degrees. I've definitely spent way too much time on the Rep Fitness Rack Builder, and I have built the Aries 2.0 in every configuration and every color combination that you could possibly imagine, probably 3 times over. So it's for sure on my list. But again, going back to what my list of things that I wanted to do were, checked off a lot of boxes, but it also had a lot of extra stuff, like being a rack that I don't need, that I didn't necessarily want to pay for. But didn't mean I wasn't willing to do it. It just means that as far as looking at all of my options, it may not be my top option. So taking that into account, what I started looking at was, okay, I don't need a full rack. A newer category of rack that's come out, and you're seeing a lot of people go to half racks. Half racks are shallower racks where you've got your weight storage on the back. For a system like this, you've got your place for your plate stacks in the back, and then you just lift out in front of the rack with spotter arms. Being that I have a full rack coming, that didn't really bother me. I don't like to lift on a half rack personally. I personally like to lift inside of a cage. I think it's a much safer way to lift. I live by myself. There's nobody to help me if I get hurt. And I like being inside of the cage with the safety straps on there, so that if something happens, if I pass out, if I blow a knee, anything like that, I've definitely done both of those things before while lifting. And I don't want to be under a barbell just injured. So I like lifting inside of a rack. And so lifting on a half rack to me isn't necessarily something I'm looking to do unless I'm trying to do lighter weight, high rep stuff. But if I really want to push myself, I want to be inside of a cage. So the half rack was nice because, hey, I don't really need the full rack. It gives me a smaller footprint, but still gives me the ability to have the cable stacks in there. And the two that I looked at, which I think really, if you're looking at, hey, I want to go with a half rack because you might be space constrained, or you don't have the irrational fears that I do about getting trapped under a barbell, then the half racks are a great way to go. The two that I would look at, the Fringe Sport Dane, I really think is one of the single best products on the market right now. Fringe has hit it out of the park with the Dane. Several different colors. A large number of you sent me messages on Instagram and YouTube when they released their limited edition green one, which I had in the cart, I'm not gonna lie. I almost just bought it because of the green. And then I realized that color alone wasn't a good reason to buy something that I don't necessarily need. But, oh, and surprise, surprise, I didn't buy the Fringe Sport Dane apparently, right? But I love that thing. It's got the heaviest weight stacks that you can get on a footprint like that or on a product like that. It's got a 1-to-1 cable pull, which works for some people, it doesn't work for other people. For me, it didn't bother me. I think that there's really going to be a market here for some aftermarket micro loading plates for cable stacks with all the cable stacks that are coming out. So the fact that you have to go on bigger jumps, I think there's going to be some ways around that. So that didn't really bother me all that much. And like I said, comes in some cool colors. I love the company. And for Black Friday, they had it on sale for $24.99 with like 20% cash back or something. You get like $500 cash back for store credit. So it will allow me to buy the rack. And then once I get the cash back, I would have been able to buy like the seat and the pull down accessories and things like that. So for 2,500 bucks, basically everything I needed. Man, I can't recommend that thing high enough. So I can't wait till Home Gym Con next year where I can actually use it. But some people I really respect speak very highly about it. So I think that's a good option for you to look at. The other one that I looked at was the GetRx RX3, I believe it is. And the cool thing about the RX3, same format, half rack with the functional trainers on the side. They have what are called tornado arms, I believe they're called. They're basically trolleys that come off the side of the rack and give you a wider width for cable crossovers. They get the cables further apart than just the posts on the rack. You can also see this on the Force USA C10 that I just reviewed. And it's a cool idea, right? It gets the cable point higher for pull downs, for tricep push downs, for somebody tall like myself. That's a benefit over the Dane, is that it would give me a higher connection point for the cables. So I looked at those two. Both of those are roughly the same price, 2,500, 3 grand, something like that. And when I looked at them, all those benefits I talked about, boy, again, if you are building a gym and I just had one small space and I couldn't have the depth for a full rack, that's something I would strongly consider. And even not needing a rack, I still have them on my list for this. So that's something you should definitely look at as well. So those are the two half rack options that I looked at. Now in there, I mentioned the C10. After you buy the C10 sliding bench, and if you haven't seen my reviews on those, I just posted reviews on the C10 all-in-one trainer and the C10 sliding bench. This is one of the most unique combinations in all-in-one trainers out there. But between the unit and the bench, I'm looking at just under 5 grand. And if I was going to spend just under 5 grand, I probably, because I don't really need a Smith machine, nor do I want a Smith machine, and I already own a leg press and a belt squat, so I don't necessarily need the leg press and the hack squat and things like that. So for me, the C10 had too much stuff, so I kind of crossed that off my list pretty quickly. I do like that unit, and if you're looking again for an all-in-one trainer that has all that stuff, you should for sure look at that. Go check out those reviews. But I eliminated that as well. So that brought me down to the next level. So I kind of looked at all that stuff and I said, okay, all that stuff, number one, it has kind of what I'm looking at, but a lot of it either didn't have the center mounted lat pull down or low row. It didn't have something that I wanted, didn't have enough weight. And then also a lot of that stuff had a lot of stuff I don't need, right? I don't need another rack. So it would be cool because I train people here to be able to have 2 racks, but I don't necessarily want to pay for that. And that brings me to the other reason I kind of crossed a lot of those off my list is, as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, I am on a budget right now and I don't have 2,500 bucks or 5 grand to spend just to get cables into my gym. I like having cables, but I don't like them $5,000 worth. So that just wasn't something that I was willing to do, is to spend that much money. And that's something that I know a lot of you guys go through too, is you have to choose what's worth your money. I get a lot of comments on these YouTube videos that, hey, that's a waste of money. And it's like, well, that's a waste of money for you, right? Whatever. Like I got that comment on the C10 video a lot was, wow, that's a waste of money. Who would pay 4 grand for that? A lot of people would pay 4 grand for that because the functions of that C10 are perfect for them. Like it's worth every penny of that 4 grand for those people. It's not worth every penny of that 4 grand for you. And that's kind of how I looked at those first options. Is it's just everything I was looking at, as cool as it would be, don't get me wrong, I would love to have, a clear grind rep Aries 2.0 with the 6 post design. And it just, man, it's awesome, right? It's a cool product. I would love to have it. The Rogue as well would be, the FML6 would be amazing. And although I don't think they make it in clear grind, which is weird. One of my favorite colors, but maybe I'd get it in a green color, who knows? But anyway, it would be cool to have that stuff. It just wouldn't be cool to spend that much money. So I had to look at the next level of product. And the next level of product were single stacks. Single stacks are basically a single column of weight. Some of them can be combined. If you buy 2, you can turn them into a rack, like the GetRx RX3. You can buy as a single stack, and then you can buy another one and then pair them together and turn it in. It's expandable down the road, right? So that's kind of cool. The Rep Adonis, I believe it is probably the best single stack on the market right now. It's got a 1-to-1 lat pull down and low row, and it's got an independent functional trainer that's a 2-to-1 cable ratio. Nice heavy cable stack. You can do nice heavy pull downs, nice heavy low rows. The cable pull on this thing is like a dream. It's so well built. Rep, man, they've always made nice stuff, but the quality level and the fit and finish and the engineering tolerances on their stuff as of late has just been awesome. So I would love to have one of those. I think it's like 2,400 bucks. Now you got to buy the Pegasus seat to go with it. You don't have to buy it, but boy, you're missing out on a lot of functionality. So you're looking a little over $3,000 for that combination. But it's nice because if you get the right hole size, you can get a seat that also scoots over to your rack. Those things pair with a rack really nicely, which is what I was looking for. So I shifted to looking at cable stacks. And there's 3 that I looked at. I looked at that Repidonis, which, like I said, man, awesome. Got to buy the rear feet if you're not bolting it down or bolting it to another rack. You got to buy the seat, a little bit expensive, but I think worth the money. If you're in the market for a single stack and you've got the $3,000 plus to spend, I don't think that there's another one that compares to that. It's that good. So that's for sure a finalist for me. I also looked at that GetRx RX3. I think GetRx is one of those companies that flies under the radar. They make some really solid stuff. They make a great array of equipment. They are also a Zebex dealer, so they sell a lot of cool cardio stuff and sleds and treadmills. It's a cool company, right? And I've always kind of wanted to get something from them. And this was an opportunity to do that. I like the tornado arms. I don't like the fact that none of this stuff is shipping till January and I wanted something right away. But it was definitely in the finalist category. And then the other one I looked at was the Bells of Steel single stack. You've been seeing a lot about this. It's an inexpensive single stack. I think it runs like 11 or 1200 bucks. When you buy it with you can buy it with or without a back brace. Without the back brace, you've got to bolt it to your wall or bolt it to the floor. With the back brace, you're still supposed to bolt it to your floor, and there's a couple of things, I guess, that you can't do on it if you don't bolt it to the floor. But on the whole, with the 210 or 220 pound weight stack, with the ability to do 2-to-1 and 1-to-1, it is a great option at its price point. And it was the lowest price thing of all the things that I looked at. So when I narrowed all my options down and I looked at the things that I wanted this stuff to do, I looked at the things that I didn't need this stuff to do, and most importantly, I looked at my wallet. I went with the Bells of Steel single stack. And I'm actually really happy with it. I got it built yesterday, in fact. So this is the 3rd time I'm recording this podcast because I wanted to wait until this thing came in and built it to actually give you an overview of it a little bit here on the podcast. Look, it's the least expensive. Does it have the fit and finish of the Adonis? No. The powder coat's really good. The finish is really good. The build quality is fairly good. There's a couple of tolerance issues on it that I wish were a little bit better. But for the price point, man, you can't beat it. And I think the plate loaded one's like $300 or $400. So man, if you need a cable system to get into your gym at a low price, this is a steal. It can be connected together to form a rack. They're actually coming out with a whole ecosystem of cable systems that can be integrated. And they just came out with something called the Colossus, which definitely I'll put a link down below for that. That's really cool. That's kind of like the Fringe Sport Dane, but they put some other cool, new, unique features in it. I like Bells of Steel as a company. A lot of people say, hey, Bells of Steel is like the new Titan. And I want to address that comment. So to me, there's a huge difference between Bells of Steel and Titan Fitness, both of which are making good stuff right now. Both of which, Titan not so much anymore, but really Titan's still a budget company. Not budget like RitFit or Major Fitness or Mikolo or any of those guys, but on the lower end of your nicer stuff, if that makes sense. And typically what you're trading off a lower price for a little bit of a lower fit and finish. You're trading off for a little bit of loose tolerances, like the cables have a little bit of slack on them. They don't affect the purpose of it, but anyway, you get the idea. The difference to me is that when I think of Bells of Steel, I think of the people. I think of Kayvon, the owner. I think of their marketing guy. I think of them as a participant in the home gym community. These guys love the home gym and garage gym community. These guys are super involved with us. They are interactive. They talk to all of us. Titan Fitness, yeah, they work with influencers, but they're kind of a big faceless company. They're just like a corporation, right? So to me, that's the feeling I get. And you know, even when I was at the booth at Home Gym Con, the Titan guys, they were all just reps that they hired for the show. Kayvon brought like himself, his product engineer, his product designers, his product testers. He wanted everybody's feedback. The Titan guys were happy to show you their products. The Bells of Steel guys wanted to pick your brain for 2 hours on what you thought they should make, what you thought could be better about their products. And for me, that's huge, guys. That to me, that's a lot. To me, that's worth money. That's worth buying from that company over the other. So if I'm looking at something at a lower price point and both Bells and Titan makes it, at this point, I'm picking Bells. They make good stuff. I've had a few of their products a while ago that weren't all that great, but I can tell you that recently they've really upped their game. They listen to their customers. They've made some upgrades to stuff. and I like the cable stack. It works really well. Now, the only reason I bought this cable stack, and I have to give a shout out to my boy Matt Porter, who is at Porter Phys Ed on Instagram, and also I'll put a link to his shop down below, makes some add-ons specifically for this Bells of Steel cable stack that if these weren't available, I would not have bought this cable stack. And here's what I'm talking about. This stack is short. I think I might be taller than it. So I can do a lat pull down sitting on the floor. I tried it this morning. It does work. I can get a full stretch. Don't like having to straddle the machine and sit on the floor though. I would really rather sit on something and have a higher stretch. I also have to kneel to do tricep pushdowns. Well, Matt makes a lat pull down attachment that spans off the front, adds some extra height. He makes a leg holder specifically for this. He also makes an arm attachment on the back. So if I ever want to do the cable flies and things like that, this integrates right into it. So the simple fact that Matt is developing an ecosystem for this particular cable stack is the final, deciding factor for me buying the Bells of Steel. If that stuff wasn't available, I would have gone with the GetRx RX3 stuff because they also have an ecosystem and ways to do all of those things. It's a little bit taller for me, so I wouldn't have the lat pull down issue. So also similarly priced once I bought Matt's add-ons, and they're shipping to me right now. I already bought them. I bought Matt's add-ons before I was able to place the order for the Bells piece. No, by the way, I ordered the Bells piece on a Sunday. It showed up on a Wednesday. I was amazed at how quickly this stuff shipped. Now, granted, it ships from Indianapolis. I'm right outside Chicago, so that was cool. I got it right away. I'm still waiting for Matt's. Hopefully that'll show up this week sometime. But that was really the deciding factor is Matt's stuff. So go check out his site. Like I said, I'll put a link below. You'll see the stuff he's making. I've talked to him quite a bit back channel. He's got some other really, really cool stuff coming out. This guy really cares. He makes some quality equipment. It's just a guy, he's a PE teacher and just really likes doing this metalwork stuff. He's got some really cool stuff coming out for metal finishes. Anyway, good guy, good company that he runs there, and we'll get you the stuff to make your Bells of Steel tower work great. The only thing I'll tell you is legal disclaimer, you need to bolt this to the floor. That said, I'm not bolting it to the floor. Now, John Greaves over at Garage Gym Life just posted a short where he's like, this is why you have to bolt it to the floor. If you load the pin at the heaviest weight, and then you pull forward on the cables, you can tip the whole thing over. I was trying to think of an exercise where I would have the whole stack loaded, my cables at the top, and me pulling forward. I'm not doing 220-pound face pulls. I don't know about you guys. So outside of that, I did very heavily loaded pull downs on this because you're pulling straight down. So to me, it's not an issue. I'm willing to take the risk. Legally, I got to tell you to bolt it down. But I'm also telling you I'm risking it, not bolting it down. So for those of you out there looking, I didn't think it was a big enough issue for me to worry about it, but I am advising you, bolt it down. You got to bolt it down. My lawyer says I have to tell you to bolt it down. So hopefully you guys get that. So that is my cable stack shopping experience. And I am so happy to have one in the gym. I really love having this. I'm really happy with my decision. This is one of those situations where, like I said, when I was talking about the Aries or the Rogue or the Rep Adonis, man, that thing is so cool, man. If you guys get the money and space, buy the Rep Adonis. It's awesome. But I didn't, I'm on a tight budget right now. Even this with Matt's accessories, we're stretching it a little bit for me. But I don't feel like I went cheap. I can do everything I want to do on this cable tower. And I think that that's one of the reasons I wanted to kind of address this episode the way that I did, which is go through my shopping methods and my experience and my thought process, is I think a lot of times, especially if you're on forums or if you're on, the Reddit home gym page or you're on the home gym community pages on Facebook, I see two, the Facebook ones especially, I see two groups of people there. I see people who are just bragging about buying stuff on Alibaba for pennies on the dollar, or buying stuff from Temu and going, it came in the same box, it's the same thing. It came in a counterfeit box, but if you want to think it's the same thing, you go right ahead and think that. And then you got the other people who are like, nothing but the top end is the best, only Rogue is the one, everything else is crap. And I think that there's, for most of us, the right place to land is in between there someplace. And I think that right now Bells of Steel is really offering, and not just this product, but a lot of things, a lot for your money. And for those of you guys out there trying to build an awesome garage gym, but you don't have the money, you don't have $3,000 for a single stack cable system, man, this is a good way to go. So anyway, so that's my shopping experience with the cable system. That's what I bought. Expect some videos soon. I've got Well, I got a lot of products to review. I've got a lot of videos in the pipeline, so look forward to a lot of stuff coming up. And podcasts every Monday. Again, you can listen on Apple, you can listen on Spotify, you can listen on Amazon, you can listen on Podbean, and leave me a review, like I said. Other than that, if you have any questions on the Bells of Steel cable stack, I own it now. Shoot them down in the comments below. If you've got some other ones that I should have looked at or mentioned, put those down below in the comments as well. And until the next podcast, thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I'm Tim from GymCrafter.